In this video, we'll be looking at second grade measurement TEKS, 2.9a, 2.9b, 2.9c, 2.9d, 2.9e, and 2.9f. The measurement TEKS in second grade all have to do with measuring length. There is no weight and there is no capacity, there is no mass measurement in second grade. It all has to do with length. In second grade is the first time the students are introduced to measuring with a ruler, and it is the last time that they have specific instruction, specific TEKS for teaching using a ruler to measure length. They will use rulers from third grade on, but there is no TEK that specifically that requires teachers to teach them how to measure length. So we're going to start out by looking at some different tools that we can use to measure and looking at the what we're going to measure. So we're just going to use this line and then this notepad in order to do our measuring today in the video, so that we see that we're giving students pictorial models of things to measure and also real objects to measure as well. So when we look at their beginning parts of measurement, the first TEK talks about find the length of objects using concrete models for standard units of length. So the students aren't doing first grade TEKS where they use paper clips, popsicle sticks, straws, just random items that are the same, but we're using very specific 1-inch centimeter tiles. We're using 1 centimeter cubes in order to measure the length of things. So we start out by giving the students the items that they're going to measure. We start out by giving them the units that they're going to measure in, and then we talk about when we measure that we have to use the same unit. I can't mix these two up to start measuring the length of this pad. I can only use either the color tiles or only use the centimeter cubes. When the students are doing their measurement, we want to make sure that they start at the very end of the item or the line that they're going to measure, that there are no gaps, there are no overlaps. This is continuing from first grade, same strategy that they used before. We're just using those very concrete models. And the same thing would be on the line, that they would have to measure no gaps, no overlaps. We can also, and it's super important for the students, to practice estimating. So even before I put this on there, how many of these color tiles do you think it would take in order to, that's how you focus, in order to measure the length of this pad? So we want the students to estimate before they actually start measuring. Another item or TEK that the students have is that they have to be able to talk about the inverse relationship. What happens if I'm measuring this pad and I measure it with the centimeter or with the color tiles? It's going to take me fewer color tiles to measure than it is these centimeter cubes. And we want the students to be able to explain that to us. Why does it take more centimeter cubes to measure the distance across than it does the color tiles? And hopefully the students are able to tell you that, well, the color tiles are really small compared to the color tiles, the color tiles are really big compared to the centimeter cube, so it's not going to take as many to go across because they fill up a bigger space every time. So the students have to talk about that inverse relationship. The larger the unit, the fewer it's going to take. The smaller the unit, the more it's going to take. So we want the students to measure in both units and compare. Why did we get two numbers? Why do we only have 6 for this one and we have a way larger number for the centimeter cubes? So that's talking about the inverse relationship, and that's leading to conversions, which they won't even get to until 4th grade, but this is just starting that appearance of what happens with that. So when we talk about length measurement in 2nd grade, we're talking about metric and customary measurement. So we have centimeter for our metric, yard, we have meter, we have inch, and we have foot. This is where we're going to focus our measurement on. We want to make sure that we provide students with a mental model of what do these look like. So you can use a quarter as representative of an inch. You can talk to the students about the space within their knuckle right here as representing an inch. The color tiles on the floor in the classroom are 1 foot. They're a good representation. And then the yard is from the bottom of the door to just about the door handle or the door knob. That's the same for the meter, and then the centimeter is the width of their little finger nail across the front there. But these are just good mental models that they can help to use in order to make those estimates that we want them to do as they're doing their measurement. So your pictures here, these are your vocabulary cards that you have with that. So now the students have been introduced to the customary terms, they've been introduced to the metric terms, and now we want to start introducing those actual tools that they're going to use to measure. And interestingly enough, we're going to start looking at the number line. The number line really is exactly what a ruler is. We have this ruler here, but it's really just a number line. We're just taking a section of it off because we don't have the arrows going in either direction. But we're looking at a part of the number line here, and basically what we're asking the students to do in the TEK that has them represent whole numbers as a distance from any given point of the number line. I'm not giving them a blank, I'm not asking them what's the rule, I'm just saying if I was at 8, how far away am I from 0? Well, this is counting by twos. I'm 2, 4, 6, 8 spaces away from 0. It's the same thing as measuring. If I had a line and I measured and it went to 8, that's kind of the connection that we're making here. So I could also give them just a part of a number line, not necessarily starting at 0, but I would ask them, how far are we away from 0 if we're at 31? And we want them to understand that 0 is way down at the other end of the line, but I'm 31 spaces from 0. I also want to ask the students, how far away am I from 28? So if I'm at 31 and the start was at 38, I'm looking for the distance. How far apart are these? 1, 2, 3. They're 3 spaces apart. So 31 is 3 away from 28. So this number line is taking us to the idea of this ruler. And that's why a lot of times we start out with a more simplified ruler for the students to use, because it looks just like a number line, and I'm not getting distracted with all of these little pieces here as well. So when I start with my ruler, I would want to start with that simplified ruler and the tools that I have. So if I have my line that I want to measure with those color tiles, and I place my simplified ruler, always instructing the kids to find the 0. We want to find the 0 mark. A lot of times we're going to find rulers that have a start, but the start really needs to be at 0. So I line my 0 up, and I place it here, and I can see that my line is about 3 inches long. Again, have the students estimate before they do their measuring, but begin by having them with their concrete model that represent their inch, or their concrete model that represents their centimeter that they're using. Have them practice with that and the ruler so they can see the connection. Instead of having these individual pieces, my pieces are all shoved together on this ruler, whether it's the simplified ruler or a ruler here, a regular ruler that we can use. So we're making our connection with our standard units. We're going to model as often as possible how we actually measure. Even if we're measuring our item that we have here, I'm going to ask the students to make sure if we're measuring in centimeters, ask them to estimate how long this is, have them find 0. I'm not lining up someplace else. I'm lining my 0 up with the beginning, not necessarily the end of the ruler, and I'm finding out the closest centimeter. When the students are telling you how long this is, you want them to write 15 centimeters, always including the unit that they need to write as well. Make sure that the tools that you use aren't just rulers. We can use yardsticks, meter sticks, you can use tape measures as well. Anything to measure length measurement with that. So the students are going to do an extensive amount of practicing, have them measure things in the classroom, measure pieces of paper as well. When they're measuring, they need to know the appropriate unit. It's not a good idea to measure this piece of paper in feet. 1 foot is this amount right here, so I want to measure this in something smaller. So making sure that the students know the appropriate unit to measure. Make sure that they're always estimating before they start measuring, and then to include that unit when they measure. Students in 2nd grade also have to solve problems involving length measure. So I have some examples of what those problems could look like for them. One problem is here, and the problem could just be simply measure and find the total length. This problem says Mary purchased this pencil below. If Mary bought another pencil like the one above and placed 2 pencils end to end, what would be the length of her 2 pencils in inches? The students first of all have to measure the actual pencil or the picture that they have, and then they have to know that I need to add those 2 together. So QT Pack is going to be probably really important in these measurement problems so the students understand what they have to do. Their steps are going to be to measure and then add. And kind of the same, the second one's a little bit harder to see, but it says, Miss Morrison has a piece of ribbon that is 15 inches long. She is going to decorate her clipboard gluing ribbon along the bottom and both sides of the clipboard. How much ribbon will Mrs. Morrison have left after decorating her clipboard? So the students have to measure both sides, they have to measure the bottom, then they have to get a total, they have to subtract. This is going to be considered one step, even though they're 3, because that's part of their TEK in 2nd grade is to add up to 4 two-digit numbers. But then we have our subtraction piece here. So these 2 problems are just examples of what that might look like. So making sure that the students use QDPAC to help them with these steps. They can still do some estimating if they need to. The final piece of measurement for 2nd grade has nothing to do with length measure. It has to do with area. So students in 2nd grade use concrete models of square units to find the area of a rectangle by covering it with no gaps, overlaps, and counting to find the total amount. So for area, they're going to be given some type of rectangle. It could be a square, and they're going to use some type of square concrete model in order to find the area. So the students would have to use color tiles or centimeter cubes, and they're going to fill in the entire square or rectangle. We're going to need some more. Without any gaps, any overlaps. And you get the idea, and of course I'm running out of my tool to measure. And I have run out. So the students are going to completely fill this in. These would all be filled in as well, and then they have to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. It was 24 square units to fill or to cover this rectangle. They can always do that estimating before. There are no other shapes that they need to do. It is all about rectangles and squares. And this is setting a foundation for 3rd grade. In 3rd grade, they move beyond just counting. They actually have to use an array, and they would have to know the length, they would have to know here, and they would multiply those two together. It's not about a formula in 3rd grade. It's just about the array. But in 2nd grade, we're counting, and it's always concrete manipulatives. So the students don't really need pictures. We just need to give them plenty of time to explore by putting color tiles all over and actually counting those different pieces. So for length measurement, if you have any questions, just let us know.